Nokia didn't lose the smartphone war overnight. At its peak, it was the world's largest mobile phone company. Its devices were everywhere.
At its height, Nokia was a force to be reckoned with in the mobile phone industry.
For millions of people, Nokia wasn't just a brand, it encapsulated the mobile phone. So how does a company like that lose its lead? The answer isn't just competition, it's that the rules of the industry changed.
It was difficult for top managers to understand and accept the capabilities that Nokia had were no longer optimal in the new conditions.
Phones were no longer just hardware, they were becoming software platforms built around apps, developers and ecosystems. And Nokia didn't just fall behind, it misread where the value in the industry was going. I'm Arjun Karpal, and in this episode of Built for Billions, we're looking at how Nokia went from dominating the mobile phone industry to losing its lead in the smartphone era. At the turn of the millennium, Nokia mobile phones were everywhere.
At its height, Nokia was a force to be reckoned with in the mobile phone industry. Customers would walk into stores and just say, I want a Nokia.
Nokia wasn't the market leader to start with. I remember the times when it was just a competitor and wanted to become even serious to be considered within the market leaders. In the beginning, it was definitely just a way to try and make products or ideas and concepts that would make sense and would, become as good as possible.
Just a decade earlier, Motorola dominated the market with bulky, expensive devices like the Dynatac. But Nokia took a different approach. Its devices were smaller, lighter, with longer battery life and designed for everyday use. That shift helped redefine what a mobile phone could be.
Bear in mind, in the early 1990s, all you did with a phone was actually held it to your head and talked to it. They moved to this transition where we went from a voice interaction with a mobile phone to a visual interaction with a mobile phone, the way we use phones today. They saw the potential of mobile data and internet connectivity, and then they started to build out this incredibly highly segmented product portfolio, catering for lots of different personas of customers, with phones at every single price point as well.
As demand for mobile phones grew, Nokia made a critical strategic shift. In the 1990s, it became a leader in GSM, the global standard that allowed mobile phones to connect across networks and countries. That gave Nokia a powerful advantage, allowing it to scale production, expand globally, and bring mobile phones to the mass market.
GSM arrives and opens this multitude of opportunities for Nokia. This particular product, the Nokia 2110, was a device which I think is the genesis of the modern mobile phone. This device, I think they had an estimate of selling something like 400,000 units. They went on to sell 20 million. Absolute powerhouse of a device. And also it had the iconic Nokia ringtone on it as well, which was very, very important.
As bandwidth grew, so it was possible to send like an image or something like that, then of course you can start creating the opportunities around it as well. So you need to create the need slightly before you can deliver, but also you may need to make sure that you can produce it so that you can deliver by the time someone wants it.
Nokia wasn't just building phones, it was building a business around volume, efficiency, and global scale. That strategy reached its peak with devices like the Nokia 3310. Simple, durable and affordable, it became one of the most successful phones ever made.
Introducing the Nokia 3300 series wireless phone.
At that moment, 126 million devices sold, the population of Japan. It blew people's minds, and I think for many people of a certain age, this device was their first phone. It's synonymous with what a phone is, and this is the device that meant that the phone was always going to be a part of people's everyday lives.
If you look at the Nokia design philosophy with the eyes of today, I would say that it was also very diverse. So it was different kinds of solutions and products for different kinds of people. So there wasn't an assumption that, something would be okay for everyone, rather trying to understand what would be, particularly for that user group, good. So if you had a fashion range, for example, it would design-wise be very bold. Or if you would have something that would more of an entrepreneurial or enterprise solution, it would be a lot more timid and not so flamboyant maybe. You could see the results also in how the understanding of humans and their needs go all the way to to the end products too.
That strategy drove explosive growth. Nokia was worth more than $290 billion at the time, making it the most valuable company in Europe, and it continued to dominate the market by producing dozens of different phones each year. Devices like the Nokia 1100 became global hits, selling more than 250 million units and becoming the best-selling mobile phone of all time.
It was a huge shift from having a technical device to actually having something that's part of you. It became a lifestyle tool, I'd say, when it became more accessible, when more people could afford to get one, and it wasn't only businessmen in a tie who would have them, and that's where it became more of a way to express who you are rather than just a functionality.
Phones were getting more affordable and they were going to the masses. And they also started to embrace the services that would go around phones. At their peak, 40% market share, an unthinkable chunk of a massive market. You had to wonder, well, how could anyone get to that stage again?
Nokia's strength was its ability to build and sell phones at massive scale across every price point. That model made it dominant, but it also meant Nokia was focused on hardware at a time when the industry was about to change.
And we are calling it iPhone.
In 2007, Apple introduced the iPhone.
When the iPhone came out, Nokia's top management had very good understanding of its specifications and potential impact on Nokia's market share, and it put a huge pressure on the middle management. Top managers were constantly under the illusion that Nokia's response to the iPhone is almost ready for launch, and they therefore didn't make any bigger changes in the processes and structures of Nokia.
It kind of quickly became clear that this was something. No one could really see it. So Nokia initially was like, yeah, we get it, it's kind of interesting, but we're going to be okay.
The iPhone wasn't just another handset, it turned the phone into a software platform built around apps, developers, and a completely different user experience. Meanwhile, Nokia's software Symbian had been built for an earlier generation of phones, and as smartphones became more complex, it struggled to keep up.
They created this operating system together with Ericsson, Siemens, Motorola, and even some of the Japanese, for example. Symbian was a great success. This cooperation between manufacturers, all these different brands. But of course, ultimately, if you're trying to do something as a committee and you've got time to market pressures, you've got competition pressures, you want devices to look different, it starts to become very, very difficult.
For years, Nokia had optimized for hardware, design, engineering, and scale. But now the value in the industry was shifting from devices to ecosystems.
Nokia's philosophy of a mobile phone was a device that was totally, utterly optimized for performance. So if you're trying to compress stuff all of the time, as they were with Symbian, and you've got years and years of code that you're working with, you kind of push one thing and another thing pops out. And they were starting to find that they were getting lots of challenges with the operating system because it just wouldn't scale the way they needed to. Although it took them a step forward, I think ultimately it did hamstring them a little bit because of the fact that they were always having to work cooperatively and try and address all the needs of all the different manufacturers.
Software people had very limited visibility to the end customers because top management would have their visibility to the customer. They had market intelligence who communicated to the product units, and then the product units sent requirements to the shared software platform. So it created a lot of internal complexity and very limited visibility to the end customer.
When the iPhone launched in 2007, Nokia was still reporting strong sales, but over the next few years, its position as the world's leading mobile phone maker began to slip.
iPhone created so much anxiety among Nokia's board members and top managers that they practically forbade Nokia people from using the iPhone. They said, don't even mention that word in this building. Stephen Elop was the first one who actually brought iPhones to the product development and compared them to Nokia phones and was saying, look how far behind we are. And this is how he woke up the organization.
But the problem wasn't just the product, it was how decisions were made inside Nokia. Decades of dominance had created a culture where bad news didn't travel and critical decisions were delayed.
When you grow really big, it might also be difficult to do really sharp decisions.
Nokia's failure was ultimately about emotional dynamics in decision making and how they shaped Nokia's technology choices.
In 2011, Nokia made a decisive move. It partnered with Microsoft, abandoning its own software and betting on Windows Phone.
I believe the strategic decision to go for Microsoft and for Windows Phone was because of the fact that Nokia believed that it had to do something different and believed that it had the skill set internally. They had this very nice Metro user interface with smart tiles, which looked quite interesting. So initial excitement, people really liked it. But then perhaps that slight disappointment that once you picked up the phone, the whole app ecosystem wasn't there. So all of those apps that we were seeing on Android and iPhone, although some anchor apps were there, they were just kind of missing.
Windows Phone failed to attract developers, and without apps, it couldn't compete with iOS or Android. In 2 years, those two ecosystems dominated the market, and Nokia's value collapsed.
Nokia underestimated the importance of external developers and how to work with external developers. So in iPhone, Android, they really invested heavily to attracting the developers. Nokia was actually paying to developers so that they would develop apps for Nokia phones because no one wanted to do it on their own.
In 2014, Nokia made its final move. It finalized the sale of its mobile phone business to Microsoft for 5.4 billion euros, bringing an end to its decades of dominance in the industry. The company that once defined the mobile phone era had exited it. But that wasn't the end for Nokia. In the next episode, we look at the part of the business that survived and how it became the foundation for Nokia's comeback.
The whole future is AI native networks. It's going to be, we think, fundamentally different than what has been delivered with the prior generations.